What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you your weekly look at what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan with my co-host Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, how you doing, man?
Doing well, man. 2020 rolls on. Ariana Grande album coming out this Friday. What a world we live in, man. I just feel lucky, you know.
But
we
Dave,
thought the content mines would be bone dry at this point. Not true.
but Dave, even more so, this Friday is Mendo.
Oh my god.
Credits will do just fine, Mendo. This is a big Friday coming up. We already have some big things to talk about today. You know, we have a bunch of movies, a TV show, and a eulogy for a dying platform, or at least a temporarily dead platform. But we wanted to start by talking about some more Marvel news. You know, we're talking about Disney Plus this Friday, and coming to Disney Plus in the near future is Oscar Isaac playing Moon Knight. Dave, this news just dropped today, Monday, 26th. What's your initial reaction to this?
To be honest, disappointment, negativity.
Really?
Yeah, I don't want Oscar Isaac tied up in this shit.
Why not?
He was just in Star Wars for so long, barely doing anything else. I actually don't want him to do franchise stuff. He's such a good actor. I just think of like him and Cumberbatch, and it seems like there's just tons of great actors. They just kind of get tied up, and their schedules are just occupied by the franchise movies because they're long time investments, and they're signed on for sequels or new seasons in the case of TV. And it's like I feel like their work is limited a little bit. So he's clearly chasing the bag. Obviously, go get it. But like, I don't know. Like, he was in 3 Star Wars movies. He was Apocalypse and X-Men Apocalypse. Like, I feel like Oscar Isaac, he's gonna be in Dune, which is a little different. But like, I don't know, man. Like, I want to see Oscar Isaac like go for more Oscars. Personally,
yeah. I mean, I feel like this isn't gonna be something that's gonna be like a 20 episode run. It'll probably be like 8 to 10 episode season, something along those lines. And if you're getting someone that high profile, they obviously have some thoughts of weaving him into whatever Marvel's crossovers are going to be in some way. But I don't know. Good for him. Get the bag. I think he likes to balance his like artsy stuff with doing some of these more like get the bag roles, and it's kind of who Oscar Isaac is at this point. You know, it's funny because when you think about him, I think the roles that immediately come to mind, probably outside of Star Wars at this point, are things for me at least like Llewyn Davis. You know, when he is really excelling in those roles, I actually think about his character in Drive a lot, even though it's like such a bit character. I feel like he just like really excels in that kind of role. And I think you're still going to get those. It's probably just going to be, you know, he's picking his spots a little bit more with those artsy ones, and the rest of the time he's like doing the Renner thing. He's like, let me just get this bag and just be the side character. Although I guess it's going to be like a feature character in this series at least.
Yeah. When was the last time Renner was in an exciting movie that wasn't him pretending to shoot a bow, though? It's been a while. That's the problem.
The Bourne movie?
Bourne Legacy? Yeah, Bourne Legacy was, 2014, I think? Like, that was a long time ago.
Are you trying to say Tag was not an exciting
2012, my
movie
bad.
for you, Dave?
Yeah.
Tag's pretty cool.
I mean, like, I'm looking at Oscar's thing. He's done some stuff. It's just, I just know, like, these shows, judging on what we know about how, like, Falcon Winter Soldier went and stuff like that, like, these shows take, like, a long time to shoot, even though, yeah, they're short seasons, but they seem to be about as long a commitment as a Marvel movie. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
We'll see.
Remains to be seen. It's good casting, though, of course. Like, he's one of the best actors we have, so hopefully he feels compelled and is not just taking the cash here.
Yeah, Moon Knight, from everything I can tell, I'm not super familiar with the character, but seems to be a pretty like snarky, quippy character, which I think is a good lane for Oscar Isaac. Because I think when he's a little bit like dry but just like absurdist in his quips, it works for him. He kind of has that delivery down. But I'm interested just to see as they kind of move into these next phases with Marvel, just like how much these TV shows really are going to be the driving force for these things. Like we already have, the movies like Blade and a couple other big ones down the road. but it really seems like they're putting a lot of investment into some of these shows, and it's really going to be such a big piece of that next phase. It's going to be interesting.
I think we're up to 7 shows at this point.
Jeez.
That have been announced, right? So that's a lot. And to Isaac's credit, I did forget, was announced recently to be in that movie about the making of The Godfather, where he's playing Francis Ford Coppola and Gyllenhaal's playing Robert Evans, and that has all the makings of like
Oscar,
really good shit. So
yeah,
that's still exciting.
Well, we'll be talking about this for sure as it comes out, but something we won't be talking about much anymore, Dave, is Quibi. It's time to pay our last respects because Quibi is shutting the doors. They're playing the song from Trolls 2 to make the staff feel better. That's actually apparently a real story that the owner told them to listen to that song to feel better after he laid them all off. Horrible. But yeah, Quibi shutting down, just could not make the money back. Where did Quibi go wrong, Dave? What was the issue?
Yeah, right. So Quibi only went live in April of this year. Short 6 months later, it's gone. And I think a common refrain that people have been sharing is that we've spent more time talking about in the beginning if Quibi would work and what Quibi was, and now why Quibi didn't work versus things that Quibi actually created. Like there's all this talk about the nearly $2 billion in content they spent and how much dollars per minute of content was made, and it seemed to be, from a creative perspective, a very lucrative place to briefly work, just because Quibi was really trying to buy up content and, get stuff out there, and they were just kind of paying for shit carte blanche and chasing scripts and all that. But, I mean, yeah, where did it go wrong? I mean, Jeffrey Katzenberg would tell you that Corona really kind of hurt their business model because they were really gearing up for this to be, the quote quick bites when you're waiting in line at the grocery store or on the subway. You just kind of bang out an episode or half an episode of a thing because, again, it's all short form content. And that maybe sounds right on its face until you realize, I think the fatal flaw was that they just misread how people work. Like when you're on the toilet, do you ever feel like, wow, I'm bored, I have no way to entertain myself right now?
No, I'm scrolling Twitter constantly.
Of course not. You're going to scroll Twitter. You're going to go on Instagram stories. You're going to do anything, right? Mm-hmm. TikTok, of course, right? Perfect for this kind of quick engagement stuff. There's plenty. It's very saturated. It's not like Quibi was filling a void. There was no void to be filled. You were just trying to stand out in that void. And against bigger brands, more successful things with huge user bases, right? That also, most of those happen to be free. Like it was just an uphill battle. Anything about how it started, right? It was only on your phones. Mm-hmm. There was no TV app, smart device app, even though we were in the pandemic. Like that was I think it really held them back. They were partnered with T-Mobile, which also kind of had its leg cut off by the pandemic in terms of getting people in the store and like getting people into Quibi. And I mean, we kind of saw the writing on the wall, right? Once the trial period ended out, you saw the app charts, like Quibi just plummeted, and it just didn't make any inroads and gain any attention. And, unlike something like Peacock or HBO Max, it's not part of a larger corporation, so there's just no safety net. Mm-hmm. So it just, another thing too, I think people kind of forgot about this or maybe didn't realize it because, again, a lot of people didn't do anything with Quibi. Initially, you couldn't like take screenshots and like share parts of the show, which is, I think we all know is the most important part of marketing these days, is the free viral marketing that fans of your content will do for you on social media. That wasn't even available originally. So it's made a lot of mistakes, but ultimately, I think they were just trying to put a square peg in a round hole.
I guess I just come back to, could this idea work if it was attached to something more stable? Something more important point, I think. Yeah, something like Netflix obviously feels like an easy place to, say download our app, which most people probably already have on their phone in some way. And then, if you have 10 minutes, you're throwing on this short episode. Maybe it's even like 4 or 5 minutes. It's kind of like a Instagram video rather than a 10, 11 minute show. I guess I'm just trying to think, and this is where the visionaries really make their money, because people like myself are not able to conceptualize what that next big thing is. But certainly his attention span is short, and this feels like the right direction to go in. But I think you need to kind of have a product people want to be engaging in. If something like Stranger Things came out next season and said like we're gonna have 5 full-length episodes or hour 20-minute episodes, but then we're gonna have these like quick side bite stories,
like
maybe
two scene things or something.
Maybe that's a way to like kind of build something like this out or test it out. It's interesting to think about.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is that Quibi as an idea has much more potential than Quibi as a brand new platform that no one understands or knows anything about. They're really two different things, and you're biting off way too much trying to do both at the same time. So if it had been kind of grafted onto Netflix, and heck, maybe down the line Netflix will take this idea anyway. It's not like short form content is somehow trademarked. They could probably try this if they wanted, but it needed to be on a platform people already were on and wanted to be on. And Quibi didn't demonstrate any kind of like killer app, any kind of like must see content in short life to even really attract anyone. So it's just a big old waste of money, I guess. But then again, creators got paid to make that content, so it's not all bad, I guess. It was all investor money and rich people money, so I don't really care about that all that much. But yeah, it's I believe it's planning to go offline like November 1st, something like that, or pretty soon.
Got a week.
So it's basically done.
Yeah. Shout out to Quibi, I guess. Anyways, let's move on to something a little bit more substantive, which is The Undoing on HBO. New Nicole Kidman, Hugh Grant starred show, hour long. Suzanne Bier, who is the director of Brothers, you might know her from, helming this. Adapted off a 2014 novel by Jean Hanf Korowitz, titled
Hanf, not sure.
Hanf, titled "You Should Have Known." And I'm intrigued by this first episode. The first episode dropped last night. Left a lot of questions. I think it did a lot of setup. Really puts the mystery at the heart. It's weird seeing Kidman in this role for 2 reasons. One, when I see her playing an affluent woman, obviously this is East Coast, I just go right back to the other HBO show that she's in.
Big Little Lies.
Big Little Lies. I was going to say Pretty Little Liars, which is not the same thing.
No, not that.
But I go to Big Little Lies, but then she's also playing a therapist in this show, and she was in a lot of therapy scenes in Big Little Lies, so It just feels like...
Also, this is a show from David E. Kelly, just like Big Little Lies.
Yeah.
Again, it's on HBO. The parallels are so obvious.
Yeah, the tone or the style feels similar. And then she's kind of playing, I wouldn't say like the same character, but a character who's a little bit more in control and command, but there's secrets going on. There's this air of she doesn't know everything that's happening. There's it's just so many similarities. It kind of took me out of it at times, but I do feel like the murder at the center of it, the weirdness of the woman who was murdered, and also at the end figuring out that her husband, right? Hugh Grant is obviously not being totally straight with her is also a very intriguing part. How are you feeling though after this first episode? Are you in on the show or are you middling?
Yeah, so being that it's a 6-episode miniseries, thankfully it's not like a 10-episode season. I feel like this probably will be able to sustain itself. Again, having not known the novel, but the familiarity, I also don't really mind all that much. We're also hanging out with rich people in New York, like Succession. Like there's just a lot of HBO drama touchstones that I can attach myself to. The kid's played by Noah Jupe from Ford vs. Ferrari and Honey Boy. He's obviously a rising young child star. Then you have Donald Sutherland as her father in some scenes, and Edgar Ramirez is the lead NYPD detective. So you have a cast you like, and yeah, I mean it's familiar, but I don't honestly mind that because I know Kidman's going to be good. Like as the mystery unfolds, we're going to see more of that range as her character inevitably is uncomfortable and goes through a gamut of emotions as she's trying to piece things together and come to grips with the role her husband may or may not have played in the death of someone she knew personally. So like it has all those trappings. So I just want to see how well it sustains itself. But even if it doesn't, I like the cast. I like the setting. That's good enough for me. It's a short, for a miniseries.
Yeah. Did you were you how did you feel about Edgar Ramirez coming in as Detective Mendoza? Because I was getting some weird vibes off that guy.
Yeah, it seemed like he was trying to like throw the wink up, raise an eyebrow. It was also kind of funny too because his partner, his colleague detective, has like traditional New York City accent. I was like, all right, yeah, this is like the classic like NYPD detective guy I know. I just ask him questions and you have Edgar Ramirez playing off of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have to assume that if you're going to cast someone with some stature like Edgar Ramirez, it's not just a nothing detective role, and it's going to be pretty involved. So yeah, that adds to the mystery, right?
And especially after we just talked about him in Wasp Network, he seems to have a bit of a rising star. I'm interested to see how he kind of plays out in all this. Matilda De Angelis was definitely the biggest surprise out of all this for me.
Yeah.
It feels like she really came in and dominated all the scenes she was in. Now, obviously, her character has a really weird presence about her. She's standing over Nicole Kidman completely naked. She's whipping her tit out to breastfeed. There's a lot going on for her, and a lot that's going to draw you to that character in general. But I really felt like she had this like gravity to her, like that scene where they're at that dinner party and they're all kind of sitting around talking about her from a distance. Then Nicole Kidman keeps glancing over, and like the way that she's just staring at her from across the room really delivered such like a strange but like capturing feeling. It really struck me just how much she kind of came in and stole some of those scenes, playing opposite some more experienced and talented, and
definitely
talented. But
yeah, I'm curious to see if there's more flashback scenes and we get more of her, or if it's really just one and done. She's just gone because she's dead, because yeah, it was definitely a unique presence, and I like kind of how it played off of the cliquey social circle that Kidman's character is a part of. Another similarity to Big Little Lies. So definitely has a lot of those ingredients that even if they're familiar, they're still kind of easy to like if the execution is good. So looking forward to the rest of it.
Just as we wrap up, quick thoughts on Hugh Grant, especially where he's at in his career right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's not. I haven't seen a lot of his stuff. Like, he made his name in like rom-coms, like back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know people really love him in the Paddington movies of late. So
yeah, he was a good villain in the second one for sure.
Yeah. So it seems like he's kind of had like a late career revival, in a sense similar to Kidman. Make a transition in your career and then be pretty successful at doing kind of the same stuff all the time, but still works.
Yeah, just kind of looking through his recent movies and television appearances. He's in a 2018 he's in 3 episodes of a show called A Very English Scandal.
Yep, that was a miniseries.
Yep. He's in The Undoing. He's in the Paddington movies. He was in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Seems like he's making some interesting choices, and he was in The Gentleman. Obviously, we saw him as Fletcher, which was an interesting role.
Yeah, he was really extra in that.
Yeah, it feels like he's kind of trying to find this like more serious kind of moving away from the rom-coms. I guess Man from U.N.C.L.E. isn't super serious, but kind of trying to find these more serious dramatic roles where he gets to kind of shine in flashes and not to carry it, which I think is probably the right move for him.
Yeah.
He's an interesting guy because he really feels like early 2000s had such a huge star, and then like what's that role for a strictly like rom-com type character after they're no longer able to play that role. It's fascinating. Anyways, let's move on to some movies. We'll start with Kajillionaire, the Miranda July movie. Hit VOD recently, starring Evan Rachel Wood, Richard Jenkins, Gina Rodriguez, a lot of big name people, at least at the top bill. I mean, it's a pretty small movie in terms of character. But Dave, I had no idea this movie was coming out, and I was simply just delighted by it. I thought it was weird and probably one of the most surprising movies and that I would never have expected myself to like usually, but I think where it really boils down to is the Evan Rachel Wood Gina Rodriguez chemistry is just off the charts and really carries this movie. Kajillionaire, good, bad, in between.
Yeah, I liked it. It's unique, and I haven't seen Miranda July's other movies, but it seems to be kind of in a similar vein. This is her first movie in I think 9 years. She's well known in the indie scene, and Kajillionaire again, Sundance movie, later picked up by Focus, and another movie that I just knew people liked it out of Sundance. Didn't really know much about it. I just knew that Evan Rachel Wood had like long hair because I saw the promo. Like I didn't really know anything about it, and it's unique. It's its own thing. It's funny. It's perplexing. It's strange. It's a lot of stuff. But I think it's pretty entertaining and pretty easy to watch the whole time. Mm-hmm. And Gina Rodriguez in particular was a really big surprise to me. Mm-hmm. I think it's really well cast. Like early on, you have Divine Joy Randolph briefly pop up as that like masseuse character, right? And when I saw Gina Rodriguez pop up when they meet her on the plane, I'm like, oh, okay, another like smart cameo. I didn't expect her to be in the rest of the movie, but I really like that presence. And yeah, it's just kind of a interesting, whimsical movie. Kind of a little hard to pin down, I guess, because I have questions about like Evan Rachel Wood's Old Dolio character, like another again just kind of unique presence, but I liked it.
Yeah. Old Dolio in the movie is a really tragic character, in my opinion. Really highlights the effect that lack of nurture and care from parents has on your upbringing, your development. And I think I liked, I really liked the final scene. I guess for those who haven't seen it, maybe this will spoil a bit, but when they're like returning the gifts and they find out how much it was, that it was a third of that group, that it was more a story about like people are who they are, and it's about finding who you are, in a sense, or at least that's kind of was my takeaway was you can't necessarily make people have a different nature, but that doesn't mean that you need to like bend your own to fit theirs. I thought it was a really powerful message. And I have to say, like, the scenes when Evan Rachel Wood was just like begging her parents to show her any sort of affection or care was really heartbreaking for me. I thought Evan Rachel Wood, who most recently we've seen in Westworld and plays a bit, she plays a robot, so their character's a bit mechanic. She was like basically the Terminator in this most recent season, playing very flat a lot of the time. Seeing her use that emotional range while also kind of reverting back to this like the Stonewall character in a sense was, I thought, really well done. The only scene, and I guess I wanted to ask you, how did you feel about the scene where they have the big earthquake and they think it's the big one, and then they kind of go off into space? It's all black. How did you feel about that?
I mean, it's weird.
Yeah,
it didn't surprise me. It kind of fit what was going on. I had no problem with it. I think my favorite scene is probably when the whole crew is at that dying old man's house. I think that was probably the most effective in terms of like their cons and how the gears turn in some of their heads about like emotionally like what they're doing and stuff like that. But I did struggle a little bit with Wood's performance just because I really did, I wasn't sure what she was doing with her voice. Like it's kind of this like lower register, non-emotive voice, and to me it kind of made Odolio seem more grating than she should have been, because she is like a tragic character. But to me, I was just kind of annoyed by some of her tics at times. Like it just didn't seem like a presence I wanted to be around. And again, you know why that was, but like it's a peculiar performance, especially once later on in the movie when she has a revelation, I guess, an epiphany, and starts becoming more emotive, and she's all happy in that convenience store, and it's like, still don't know what this voice is doing, but it's a quirky movie. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, Richard, there's definitely some funny moments. I think every time Divine Joy kind of comes back in, I really found myself just like giggling because she always just is playing such like an awkward like no, like this is not how people interact kind of way, like that straight man in a sense. I thought Richard Jenkins was great. He's pretty much always solid in whatever movie he's in. I didn't really care for the mom too much. I kind of thought, I mean, and you know what, that might have actually been kind of the point. Deborah Winger, I thought acted fine, but really just found myself dying for that mom to show old Dolio any sort of affection. It was really aggravating to me as a bleeding heart, I guess. But yeah, that final scene where Woods and Rodriguez, are like kind of like crackling with sexual tension between each other, I just thought was phenomenal, and did not see that kind of coming when they first met. But as the movie developed and they kind of grew closer, that like will they, won't they, really surprised me with how strong it kind of came on.
Yeah, I agree. Because you're introduced to the characters early on, and they're like grifters. They're just low rent con men. Mm-hmm. Like I think the movie has a lot to sets itself out to get you on its side because everyone's unlikable from the jump. But July does a really good job with making old Dolio much more nuanced and well-rounded as a presence. Mm-hmm. And again, I think Gina Rodriguez's presence really stood out. I definitely my favorite role she's had, to be honest. Like, I didn't watch Jane the Virgin, but she hasn't really wowed me in much of her movies stuff apart from, I guess, Annihilation. But I thought she was really great in this. And I think there's just some funny stuff too in this, right? Like the over-the-top acrobatics Dolio does to avoid cameras, and the fact that they're living in an office where the bubble factory literally suds their walls. Like there's some ridiculous ass shit in this movie too. So
the bubble factory owner kind of being such a weeping willow in a sense, and like bleeding heart to them while having to like stand up, I thought was a really
500. It's very fair.
Yeah.
Which yes, it is very fair.
Yeah, especially for LA. Any last thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, no, I mean this.
Check it out.
Check it out. VOD.
That's the way we watch movies now because of we're still dealing with COVID. Anyways, moving on to another way that we're watching, which is on streaming. That's Witches on HBO. Mm-hmm. From Roald Dahl. Okay. And
it's not really from him. It's based off his book.
Based off his book, right? So based off the Roald Dahl story, Witches.
From Robert Zemeckis.
Yeah, so Zemeckis, very famous, accomplished actor, director. Yeah. You know him from a number of very famous movies. Forrest Gump.
Back to the Future.
Roger
Rabbit.
So you're kind of going into this thinking this is a Robert Zemeckis movie, probably expecting it to be pretty good. Well, Dave did not leave this movie feeling like it was really good. Entertaining, perhaps at times, but just a lot that I didn't like. Did you feel the same way?
Yeah, it's for kids too, right?
Yeah,
it's pretty overtly juvenile, both for its sentiments and who it's trying to entertain, but also to me, just like kind of the filmmaking, the structure of it all. Like the first 15 minutes of the movie is nonstop narration exposition from Chris Rock and Octavia Spencer, right? Like it's just pretty simple. The whole premise. I hadn't seen the original adaptation with Angelica Houston playing the Grand High Witch. I know it's a bit of a cult classic. It's on Netflix right now. This time around, there's been some things changed, like, setting this back in like 60s with with black leads. Felt like there was more meat left on that bone, I think, obviously, but they didn't really go down that road at all. Maybe because they're trying to entertain kids, I don't know. But I think the best part is probably Anne Hathaway as the Grand High Witch this time around, just because it's really out there and she's just going for it and having fun. So that was the most entertaining part to me. But a lot of times I was like, wow, there's like a distracting amount of unnecessary CGI in this. Like, did you really need to animate that mouse in the little boy's pocket, like chest pocket? Like, no, I don't think you did. Like, that seemed like a strange use of funds to me. I don't know, but Yeah, I mean, it's a low stakes kids movie at the end of the day. It's kind of like Enola Holmes, I guess.
Yeah, but Enola Holmes, I felt like at least there was like a mystery at the heart of it. It was kind of like compelling to like follow that along, and the action scenes were definitely, I think, more entertaining than this. Hathaway is going for it for sure. Not sure what that accent is supposed to be. Kind of comes and goes throughout. The CGI on her face, really unpleasant to look at, which is obviously effective because that's what they're trying to do. But like the mouth that's too big for the human form. Okay, spooky did the part, but I kind of just felt like this was it's gonna sound so weird when I say it, but it was almost like a Halloween episode of Everybody Hates Chris. The Chris Rock television show, because it was the same exact setup where it's him, narrating as a older adult talking about his childhood, and that's kind of what happens this whole time. And there is not a lack of talent in this movie. You have Anne Hathaway, Stanley Tucci, Octavia Spencer, Chris Rock obviously narrating. Kristen Chenoweth is the voice of little Mousy, Daisy. There's some talent there.
Equally impressive, the screenplay was worked on by Kenya Barris and Guillermo del Toro in addition to Robert Zemeckis. And Kenya Barris, obviously one of the most accomplished TV producers going at the moment, really thought he could have brought more to the whole flip, because the original movie and book, it's not about black kids in the South, it's in England, right? Like, yet they didn't actually do anything with that. Like, it almost was just like performative, I guess. I don't know. Like, so yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough to recommend much of it, really. And I wasn't familiar with the Roald Dahl story, but all the Roald Dahl stuff for the most part's pretty well liked, or at least pretty popular, right? At least, again, in the realm of entertaining children. So then again, you look at Robert Zemeckis' run since the 2000s, it's mainly misses, TBH.
Yeah.
There's some gems once in a while, but this is, I don't know, seems a little misbegotten to me. And also, you think about like Del Toro, Zemeckis, Kenya Barris, all those people working on a screenplay. Wow, that many passes on it from all these talented people. Would have thought it would have been better, but then again, that's also probably just a sign that it wasn't coming together all that much, and they needed help with it.
Yeah, it's I think like the parts I would say were fairly well done is maybe the scene where Anne Hathaway is like in has like the witch convention or whatever. Yeah, like she's and you know what, that's really just Anne Hathaway showing out and like being absurd and ridiculous, but it's interesting. I guess
but like in that scene, right, it's like Chris Rock's like, and then at that moment I realized I had to get out of there because those witches were witches, and they want
they're gonna eat me.
Go. Yeah. It's like, you don't have to nail it that. You can just write the movie better and just have the action happen. Like, and it was just pretty juvenile all around.
And I gotta say, the like chubby kid character, obviously there for comedic relief, but I did not like him at all. I found him incredibly grating.
Gloop looking ass.
Yeah, very frustrating. Just that whole character did not work for me. I'm just looking here at Zemeckis' filmography. When was the last movie you'd say was pretty good? I guess Flight.
That's what I would go with. Yeah, Flight, which is 2012. Right.
And then before that,
Casa. It's a lot of like high profile films, right? Like a lot of times they didn't go well. Allied, the Brad Pitt movie. Welcome to Marlin, notorious flop with Carell, right? Like, it's not for a lack of trying. It just seems to be I guess the Walk, the JGL tightrope movie. I think that was like decent.
Yeah, but the documentary was better.
That's a good point.
Well, we have an untitled Pinocchio live action adaptation to be looking forward to.
Yeah, that's in development hell though.
Yeah.
Del Toro's also involved with that.
Oh
at
boy.
one point.
Anyways, wow, we're gonna go from Witches, a movie that, I guess is a children's movie, entertaining, fun, to a movie that I don't know if it needed to even be made. Rebecca, the 2020 remake of the 1940 classic by the same name from Alfred Hitchcock. Ever heard of him? His only Best Picture winning film, which
Yeah.
is kind of crazy to say,
Yeah.
especially because this is probably not the first film people think about when they think Hitchcock.
Yeah, I would say it's a popular film, but definitely not close to his most well regarded, even though it's well regarded, right? Like, what do you think of
Psycho?
North by Northwest, Psycho, Vertigo? Like, there's some
Mhm.
obvious ones that are just kind of at a different level than this.
Is he
But
Rear Window as well? I think so, right?
yeah,
So
but this also notably was like contract work for Hitchcock, and it's an adaptation of a novel. So I think he still does a lot of cool stuff. Me and you both watched that Hitchcock one for the first time recently. I was surprised to see it wasn't on HBO Max like so many other golden age Hollywood movies, but thankfully it's available on YouTube in full. You don't have to like watch like 30 clips. It's just all there, because I guess the rights to this movie maybe are in limbo. Who knows? But I was happy to have that experience, and gotta say, going into a new remake, which is actually not the only remake. There was a '97 miniseries as well, but going into this 2020 remake from Ben Wheatley so soon after seeing the Hitchcock version did not do the remake any favors. Let's put it bluntly. This one was a tough hang.
yeah, I guess we'll start like, we love Army Hammer. We stand for him. Dancing and Call Me by Your Name.
Yeah.
We like most of the things he's
Social
done
Network.
recently. Yep.
Sorry to bother you. Even he has had moments, but
He's no Laurence Olivier.
not as an actor. But I think he was. I think honestly, really disappointing in this, because on his face, Army Hammer, the reason he had a career to start with was because he's a very conventionally handsome man, and yet he cannot actually convey it all that well in this Rebecca movie. Like, he's cold. His line deliveries are almost understated. Like, he kind of like fumbles lines at times. When he's angry, it does not come across that well. Like, you think of like the ballroom scene, like Olivier's like face in that moment is so much more compelling than Hammer's just kind of basic scowl. Like, he did not deliver at all as a
Maximilian. Yeah. It's I think the part that I was most surprised at, right? Because it feels like like you said, he's kind of made to be in this role in a sense. Like, I don't really love the character of Maximilian. He's kind of like this brooding, almost like childish in ways, the way he like deals with his anger type.
Yeah,
spoiled millionaire,
old money elite, inherited wealth, all that stuff.
Very controlling, and that's a hard role to like until like you kind of find out the reason he's so secretive and so playing things so close to the vest is he actually did end up killing his wife, but like kind of gets off in a way by like the coroner report. But like you said, he should have crushed this, and it just felt listless in a lot of ways, almost like he didn't even like care to be there. It's hard to follow Laurence Olivier, but like need a little bit more from you. Lily James, I also found to be just like not even close to Joan Fontaine's.
Oh, no way.
Miss De Winter. It's just kind of like, where was the inspiration for this? Like, why even do this? Is kind of where I kept going back to. No one seemed into it.
And that's what's funny too, is when you watch the opening movie, it's presenting itself as a adaptation of the novel, which it is. So it was, but you inherently are in the shadow of Hitchcock when you try and do this. You can look at the history of Hitchcock adaptations and follow-ups. It is not go well for the imitators, right? Look no further than Gus Van Sant. But like in this case, like you have Lily James, who has had a solid career, but probably an unremarkable one, given I think the fame she's built up. And in this case, I don't think the fear and uneasiness with the mystery of everything at Manderley is conveyed well at all. I think my favorite part about the whole movie, honestly, was everything in Monaco, in Monte Carlo,
Yeah.
just because the visual stood out more. Like if you watch this and you contrast it with the Hitchcock version, obviously this is one's in color, but also the ability just to construct scenes has evolved, right? So like we actually are watching them drive the car this time on real roads on the French Riviera versus the old timey stuff, which is obviously hilarious, right? And like there's actually some connective tissue scenes, right? Like we watch them like PG rated have sex on the beach, right?
Mhm.
Like there's a few more conversations between them. Like it seems like they're trying to actually like
build this relationship more.
build up, and yet it doesn't seem to really work that much. Like you have Ann Dowd as what's her name, the person that she's serving in the beginning, the old woman.
Crap,
somehow even more grating and like irredeemable than the original version of the character from Hitchcock, which is hilarious. Notably, I was actually looking it up for the miniseries. You have Charles Dance as Maxim. You have Faye Dunaway as the old lady, and you have Diana Rigg, aka Lana Tyrell, as Mrs. Danvers. Really
not bad. Yeah, and I guess that's the thing is I do feel like the Hitchcock movie really thrives because Mrs. Danvers in that movie is just so creepy. Like she has such a brooding, dark presence around her, and Kristen Scott Thomas I thought delivered that okay, and I actually think if any of these actors really gave it their all, she's the one I would point to. But it's just hard to live up to that creepiness that comes in. That's also Hitchcock, like the lighting, that scene where she's trying to convince Mrs. De Winter to jump off and kill herself. It's so well done, and
so effective.
And in this one, it just kind of was like, I don't know, I'm not really buying it. So something is just missing there.
Yeah, I would say Kristen Scott Thomas definitely did the best at trying to make it her own version of the character. Mm-hmm. And part of that, I think, is the way this screenplay works, right? She was way more obvious, actually, in her poor intentions. Like in the Hitchcock version, Anderson is much harder to pin down. Yeah. Also, due to Hays Code stuff, the lesbian subtext that's more present in the novel is very, very faint in the Hitchcock version. And in this one, I think that's almost a missed opportunity. I still didn't find it very effective, even though they had more runway to actually try and do stuff with that. What did you think about the scene where Danvers jumps into the ocean? In the book, in the Hitchcock version, Danvers' fate in general is pretty ambiguous. You think she got killed by the fire in the movie, but not really clear. But in this one, she has another final talk with the second Miss De Winter, and then she jumps off into the ocean. It's like, oh, interesting. Really kind of putting the nail on the head with that one.
Yeah, I think what I like about the ending in the Hitchcock one is, so even though you're saying it's a little bit ambiguous, I mean, she's in that fire, and you see something fall on her, and it says Rebecca, and it's on fire. Yeah. So you're pretty certain she's gonna die. Although I guess you don't see her die, so that the rule of movies, maybe she'll be in the sequel. But in this one, it just feels unnecessarily on the nose. But I think, like you said, that kind of goes back to the shortfalls of the script in general and the screenplay. Because if you're telling the story the way that you need to, you can have something like Mrs. Danvers running around as the building's on fire, then it falls on her, and you're just kind of okay, what is this trying to say? How do I make sense of the fact that she did this? Whereas in this, it's spelling it out for you. It's pretty much telling you yep, I was in love with Rebecca, and I can't let her death just go. I need to destroy everything that is attached to it. It's just kind of tell, not show, don't tell all the time. And if there's one scene that I think encapsulates the failure of this movie and why the other one works so well, it's probably how you juxtapose those endings together.
Sure.
I don't know. Really disappointing
Yeah,
overall.
definitely. And like the way this movie was set up too was gonna like kind of kickstart Netflix's, awards run where they're gonna start dropping all their high profile prestige films every few weeks throughout the end of the year. And I was definitely expecting good things, but didn't get there. I think visually, I think there's some cool moments, like when like the ship flare happens, and that they found the wreckage and the bodies can be discovered. I thought that looked actually really cool. There's some nice uses of like CGI to make Manderley look pretty imposing and impressive, but ultimately, a lot of times I was just wanting it more. Like there's that moment where there's that dream sequence where Lily James is like freaking out, like the vines are all over her in the bed. I think if you're gonna remake something in the shadow of Hitchcock, why don't you go for that and like make it like really psychological?
Yeah.
Like you briefly had that moment when there's like it flashes red and everyone's dancing around her, and like again mentally she's like going through everything. Like again, lots of potential, and like Ben Wheatley, a director who really made a name for himself as an intriguing indie filmmaker beginning of the decade. Again, just delivering something pretty uninspired, which is disappointing because his next movie is going to be Tomb Raider 2 with Alicia Vikander. So it's like he's definitely chasing the bag a little bit with this one. Honestly, though, I think probably is the closest thing to a modern day Rebecca. I've seen people say this. It's Paul Thomas Anderson's Phantom Thread.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't make that connection myself, but I think that makes a lot of sense.
that makes a lot of sense, and that movie is so much more well done.
Not even close.
Geez. Well, Rebecca, you can watch the Hitchcock Rebecca for free on YouTube. The whole thing is there. Do that. Skip the Netflix one unless you need to fall asleep. Let's go to Borat to wrap this up. And Dave, I'm gonna give you the full name here. Are you ready for it?
Yeah.
Borat, subsequent movie film, delivery of prodigious bride to American regime for make benefit once glorious nation of Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan.
Yeah, dude. how Dave said it. Pronunciation not my strong suit. So, I mean, we all know Borat. This was directed by Jason Wallner, but really it's a Sacha Baron Cohen film. And character Borat created way back with the Ali G show. Did you watch that growing up, the Ali G show?
No, I've seen a clip or two, but I was pretty much unfamiliar with Baron Cohen in general until Borat came out in 06.
It's funny because I really loved Ali G. I used to watch. I didn't like follow it like episode to episode, but we would legally download it. I would watch it. It was great. But I never really found myself gravitating towards Borat as a character. So when he kind of blew up, I was kind of like, okay, like
big Bruno guy.
Not even close to being a Bruno guy. Ali G though for life. Booyakasha. Borat blew up back. When did the first movie drop? 2006.
06. Yeah.
06.
Notably nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay at the Oscars.
Insane. And Sacha Baron Cohen since has just been like a rocket ship. Like we were talking last week during the trial of the Chicago 7. He is revered, I think, in comedy circles as not only this great like mockumentary maker and kind of stunt setup guy, but he's showing he has real acting chops. Rumored over the last 10 years to be attached to a Freddie Mercury.
Could have been.
Yeah, ended up not being part of that. And you can listen to our review on Bohemian Rhapsody. But Borat, subsequent movie film, coming out and being this really surprising movie because it wasn't just this like. I think what made this movie work for me was that it wasn't just this like gotcha mockumentary film. It had a real heart to it at the center of like father-daughter relationships.
Sure.
And even though it's played through this absurdist prism of Borat and how he kind of mocks this like Middle Eastern what Americans think of Middle Eastern countries and society. I think where it kind of ends up is a real like story about fathers loving their daughters and valuing them and sacrificing for them. It's pretty interesting. What was your takeaway from the movie?
Yeah, I mean, when we heard about it, we heard Amazon acquired it. I was like, wow, kind of secret Borat sequel made 14 years later, more or less under the radar. There were some reports about Baron Cohen doing stuff in the summer, but there was no, like, I think, official, like, connecting of those dots until quite recently. And that's pretty cool because it's hard to pull off. And, you know, watching the movie and seeing how Baron Cohen's able to, like, kind of do this stuff all over again by kind of simply just changing what Borat's wearing so he's not as recognizable. Man, I mean, on one hand, it's simple in its effectiveness in showing how, you know, the flaws of American society and the, you know, base level bigotry and hypocrisy that's rampant in how a lot of people here conduct themselves, right? And the movie felt really unique but necessary in '06, and then somehow feels the same way in 2020, despite we're living in a much crazier world where you don't think something like this would be nearly as effective, especially the second time around. But, you know, as you move into like COVID and you get really pointed about the Trump administration in this movie, I was surprised with still how effective a lot of the stuff is. Again, like the first movie, it's going to have controversial moments. Borat as a character is definitely not PC. There's a lot of stuff, you know, and under the guise of satire, you know, and that's how it's presented. But you are just going to piss some people off, right? There's some stuff with Jews once again that is definitely on the line, if not crossing it, right? And
yeah, it crosses it.
Yeah. I mean, you're literally parroting about anti-Semitism, and like, again, like the point is right. Like, oh, well, I was told the Holocaust isn't real because of Facebook, so darn. Because like the joke in the first movie was that his country was really proud of all the Kazakhs' role in the Holocaust, right? And it's like, on one hand, it's a kind of a ingenious way to like wrap this thing around, but at the same time, you're still parroting like Holocaust denial, even in a joking fashion. I think that, and that's the thing with most people's problem would be, right, is that even if you're like jokingly and over the toply presenting these ridiculous views, like whether in this one COVID denialism, stuff like that, right? Hillary Clinton is a vampire, stuff like that, right? You're still kind of like giving credence to the stuff, the way you're presenting it, and even jokingly your character, but like still kind of taking it seriously. So I understand why people wouldn't like it, but still a lot of funny stuff, man. And for me, I was less invested in like the father-daughter relationship as like an actual plot mechanic for like the movie of it all, but just kind of scene to scene, gag to gag, you know. Some work better than others, but that's kind of where I was just most entertained. And the CPAC scene in particular, which did get news coverage at the time, is some really hilarious stuff. I mean, geez, in the beginning, when he literally walks in a Klan robe, I'm like, oh my god, this is like, it's so on the nose, right? Because like closest thing we have to a modern day Klan rally, I guess. But doing that, and then like at first I thought it was like selectively edited, right? When he was like, you know, yelling out to Pence, and then you see Pence look over. I'm like, oh well, maybe Pence was reacting to something else. This hadn't happened. And I remember, oh wait, no, Cohen literally went there.
Yeah.
Like waited. Apparently, he told the New York Times he waited in the bathroom for hours until his time was right.
5 hours.
Crazy. Good stuff.
Yeah, no, the dedication to the bit is really funny. The bit that I found probably most funny, and I didn't find research on this, so I'm sure maybe I could, if I dug a little harder, I could. But when he's kind of quarantining with these right-wing guys,
QAnon guys,
oh my god, all of that was so hilarious, and I just found it to be such a really funny like microcosm of like this like quarantine period when everybody's like around like doing all this ridiculous stuff, but also like highlighting the QAnon absurdity and BS, and that leading to the scene where he's singing like we're gonna what did he keep saying?
The Wuhan flu.
And, we're gonna give them the
blaming
Wuhan
Obama,
flu.
and like it was actually
Everybody.
I was kind of impressed with the tune of the song.
Yeah,
Really offensive racist song, but like it was
absolutely.
actually like a well constructed like comedic song, I guess.
Yeah, and it just was such a great like run in the middle of the film. Um, and just to circle back, there is some controversy. Obviously, the anti-Semitism stuff is crossing the line in general, but there's some back and forth between Sacha Baron Cohen's camp and the survivor who he talks to in the temple, where the movie's dedicated to her. I'm forgetting her name. I'll look it up as you're talking next. But
Holocaust survivor.
Yeah, and she gives a wonderful talk with him and is very loving and caring. Supposedly, she died after the movie, and her family is claiming she did not know the intention of how the movie's being used. And Baron Cohen saying that she was aware of it, that she was the only person that he told ahead of time. The bit he was doing because he didn't want to offend her being a survivor. Right. It's a very like touchy thing, but it kind of goes down to like that. These are real people who pretty much everybody in this movie was not an actor. The scene where they do the dance at the ball down in Georgia, was absolutely absurd, but they actually like sent out a online survey, and you had to be able to know who Mike Huckabee was, but not Will Ferrell or Sacha Baron Cohen, right? So they like were specifically picking people who they could dupe, but still, like these are people who are real people experiencing these absurd things happening.
I mean, this came up with the original movie too, but Baron Cohen is a Jewish man, and yet he's still really taking it as far as he can. And I don't know, I feel like that's up for Jewish people to decide at the end of the day. But their opinion matters more than mine on it. But and it seems like Kazakhstan, the real Kazakhstan, has kind of made their peace with Borat after initially really not liking how it went down. Original movie, of course, banned throughout just about all of the Arab world at the time. Like it's notable, right? Because Baron Cohen, as Borat, he doesn't speak Kazakh at all. He's speaking like Hebrew and I think Polish when he's talking. And his village scenes are not actually shot in Kazakhstan; they're shot in Romania. So it's this big old mismatch of things, which again kind of fits with what he's going for, because to most Americans, it's all a mismatch of things they don't know the difference between anyway, right?
Yeah.
So I, again, like in Trump's America in 2020, I was actually still surprised with how effective like a lot of the societal comment can be, because we talked about this with stuff like Veep, or eventually like the old way of lampooning stuff isn't as effective when reality is
lampooning itself.
Already lampooning what we previously expected convention to be, right? Yeah. But I was impressed with how successful subsequent Moviefilm was ultimately.
Yeah, I agree. I thought this was great success for Borat, but I guess I wanted to ask, this is where most of the attention for the movie has been by those who haven't seen it, and just kind of the Twitter talking head in general. Thoughts on the Rudy scene? Were you shocked by it? Did it?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? You can. I think Baron Cohen put it well. He's like, hey, you know what? You can watch the scene and make up your own mind. Whether he's adjusting his mic,
he's tucking it in,
or taking out his dick. Who's to say, right? I don't know. But you know what I did notice? He was really touchy-feely with the actor playing his daughter. He was, kind of crossing the line, and Baron Cohen kind of coming in to make sure it didn't actually go any farther, because he's still a real human at the end of the day, and that's not what the plan was, right? So I think what they were going for is what they got, right? It's like they're just gonna lampoon Giuliani, who's falling for their shit and their pretense, and the fact that he couldn't help himself from being a creepy old man. That's just the benefit of the movie at the end of the day, and considering no harm ultimately was done, I think it's pretty good. It's hilarious to see everyone else chime in about it, and you have like Trump saying all this shit about Baron Cohen. He's like, hey bro, thanks for the publicity.
Yeah.
So I don't know, make up your mind, but I mean, Giuliani does not come across well in the scene, whether you think anything happened or not.
Yeah. No, I agree. Maria Bakalova plays Tutar, the daughter. I thought she was great, and I agree. Rudy I mean, it's pretty obvious, I think, what he was doing. Same when I watched it, but obviously everything
you can give me your number and address. Something he literally said.
Yeah. What? Weird.
If that was anything professional related, his people working for him would have handled that stuff. Let's be real.
Totally. One last scene I want to shout out, just because I thought it was absolutely hilarious and appalling, was the baby inside me scene when they go to the doctor. That doctor, the fact he like signed off to like allow his image to be used is absolutely shocking to me. Nope. Just having a dad saying, I put a baby inside my daughter right there, and just like being like, yeah, no, we gotta leave it. Like that. I mean, no matter where you kind of stand, that's at least a CPS call. I was dying laughing at it, but then I just like, the more I was like, I think the further you get away from these things, they're funny, but you're also kind of appalled at the level of humanity and idiocy in a lot of these.
IndieWire did like a list of all like the scenes and like gags, and they actually reached out to everyone because, again, just about everybody that it's real people didn't know. Like, and obviously there's cameras around, so they're just told something else, and then they later sign off on it anyway. But it's kind of funny to hear what people say about what they thought was happening, and of course some people cannot be reached. Notably, in the credits for the racist song he sings at the rally, the two guys he was quarantining with are also credited as songwriters. So you wonder if they're actually in on it and like pseudo actors, or they literally just helped him write the song and thus are credited with it. Like, who's to say?
God, crazy. Check out Borat, Amazon Prime. Definitely gonna make you laugh a little bit, no matter which side of the aisle.
Not.
Anyways, Dave, what should the people be listening to, watching for next week? Ariana Grande and Mendo.
That's right. Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1, on Friday on Disney+. Ariana Grande, 6th studio album? 5th, 6th? Positions, lead single out now. Very excited about that. Also, the return of Sam Smith. When Sam picked this date, I don't think they thought Ariana was also dropping this date, now committed, so you get them both. Kind of funny how that goes sometimes. Also, we got the end of We Are Who We Are on HBO from Luca, and The Queen's Gambit on Netflix. Anya Taylor-Joy, chess drama. Big fan of it. We'll talk about that whole season. It's dominating the Netflix top 10 right now, and I would say for good reason. Shit's good.
And maybe we'll talk some spooky season stuff. I don't know.
Sure.
We'll throw it out there. But anyways, at Nowstalgia Pod, Twitter, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod. Have a good week.